Arise, my India was the clarion call used by Swami Vivekananda to awaken a nation. The Indian civilization remained intact for thousands of years because it relied on spiritual aspirations rather than on material gain. After independence, this spiritual focus was lost. We hope this series of talks, inspired by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna, will reignite the spiritual flame of modern India.
J. Lakhani, an excellent communicator of Hinduism in Britain and director of the Hindu Academy, the Vivekananda Centre in London. Over the last 15 years, Sri Lakhani has given talks on Hinduism to thousands of youngsters at English schools, colleges and universities. If you wish to get a glimpse of the modern, dynamic face of Hinduism, then do not miss this series of talks.
Hi everyone, welcome to EY and welcome to the second session in the Spiritual Humanism series. The first session we had in October. It was a successful event that was titled Science and Spirituality. So this is Reincarnation, Myth or Reality, which is a good follow-on from Science and Spirituality. For the last session, we had a dynamic and engaging speaker, and it's a privilege to have that same speaker with us for this session, and that's Jay Lakhani. For those of you who do not know Jay, a brief background. Jay's a physicist, to be specific, a theoretical physicist, who's dedicated his life to bridging the gap between science and spirituality. He's also the first Hindu tutor at Eton College, and he has explored the findings at the cutting edge of modern physics to see how they relate to the ideas of spirituality. Jay also frequently presents through the media to various channels such as the BBC, The Guardian, The Telegraph, and TED Talks, and that's just to name a few examples. There are many more. He also delivers talks and presentations to the leading organizations throughout the country in various sectors and to the leading institutions such as the leading universities and schools. The format for this evening's event, it'll follow a similar format to the last session where Jay will talk for around 40 to 45 minutes. Then there will be an opportunity for you to ask those burning questions. So, in my opinion, the questions and answers can make the experience of this event so much more richer. So if you do have any pointed or controversial questions, please do ask them. I would also like to thank the EY South Asian Network for helping to make this event happen. Specifically Vikas Golcha and Gunjan Tripathi, who's at the back. Thank you very much. Without taking up any more time, let's give Jay a warm welcome.
Good evening. You see, my background is actually theoretical physics. So I always present ideas which are rational, hopefully structured and sensible and do not fly off the handle. So I'll try and make a presentation that is as rational and as rounded as possible. The second thing I must point out right at the start is this. A lot of people feel things like, reincarnation are exotic topics, but surely too outlandish to bother with. What I'm going to say is this. At the end of my talk, you will realize how potent this idea is and why it is necessary to reintroduce this idea in greater society, in modern society, invoke it and infuse it for greater mankind. There is a reason for it. You'll soon find out why this idea is so potent and so important. Okay, let's begin the journey. First of all, you see, there are three groups of people in this world. There are the atheists, the humanists, who I interact with all the time with greatest in a very robust manner. They tell me, Mr. Lakhani, the only life we believe in is life before death. rather than life after death. It's a very, very honest comment to pass. Why not? Just focus on this life and why bother about what happens when we die or after we die? So you've got a group of atheists, if you like, very skeptical about the idea of metaphysics or reincarnation, and say, look, we just want to live here and go away, stop all this waffle. They believe in just one life scenario. You just get a chance to be born accidentally and then you get snuffed out. Then there's a second bunch of people who say we have two lives, this one and the next everlasting one. Most of the Abrahamic tradition believe in this second version. We have this life and then we have a next everlasting life. And I must crack a bit of humor. Come on, you must lighten up. And in this particular scenario, they say if you are a goody-goody, when you die, you go to heaven and you have barbecue with God forever and ever. Isn't it great fun? And if you are a baddie, you are the barbecue. We roast you forever and ever. I'm cracking humor because people can crack humor at reincarnation too. And then there is a third bunch of people who say, we come again and again. Now this is not a small number of people. Nearly half the world population subscribe to the idea of reincarnation, or with the Buddhist tradition, rebirth. There's a slight variation. The Hindus, the Buddhists, the Jains and the Sikhs subscribe to the idea of reincarnation. It is central. Now you see, straight away a question arises, how can you believe in stuff like that? It's so outlandish. Does anybody here remember their past lives? You might go, oh dear. And even me, I don't remember my past life. How can I present these ideas? I don't remember. And I'm supposed to have lived many lives. So surely one of those lives should leave a memory. And I don't seem to remember any of my previous lives. And I've been quizzing a lot of groups saying, do you remember your past life? And one or two once in a while put the hand up, but mostly there's no response. So a question arises, how can you believe in stuff like that? The answer, which is reasonably sensible, says, the reason why you don't remember your past life or lives is because the process of rebirth is very traumatic and it really jars you. So the memory of the past life goes into your, if you like, into your unconscious and is not visible or not apparent when you are reborn. There's a second reason which I feel is much more interesting. It says the reason why you don't remember your past life is because actually you don't want to. You say, oh no, we want to. Maybe we have hidden some treasure somewhere, we can dig it out and have fun. So I would love to remember my past life. And sometimes some aunties, I interact with lots of individuals. Some aunties said, Mr. Lakhani, you want to remember past life? I said, no, you don't, madam, you don't want to remember. Oh, no, yes, I want to remember. I said, suppose you remember in your past life, you're married to the handsome prince who used to ride that white stallion, and the prince had a moustache. He was brave and courageous and valiant and handsome. And then you look at your husband of this present life. He's sitting with a pot belly, with a can of beer, saying, hey, where's the remote control? You'll be so put off. Your loyalty will be so divided, you will wish you never remembered your past life. I'm lightening up. But the serious part is, in a way, if the past life memory comes back to us, even accidentally, it can break us. It's a very sensitive thing because we left behind so many loving people, and if that memory floods back, it will really harm us. So it's like a self-defense mechanism of the mind that doesn't want to remember, want to put a curtain over your past life and allow you to start afresh. So far, so good. You say, Mr. Lakhani, so far you're supposed to be a physicist, but you're not proved reincarnation. The only thing you've done is a cop-out, giving an excuse why you can't remember. That's not good enough. So let us begin the journey. How can we verify this exotic idea? You see, a lot of research is being done at the moment on the near-death experience. This means, does anything survive death? Recently, the University of Southampton carried out research and published the research where they have recorded 2,000 cases of near-death experience in 15 different hospitals. So this is serious stuff, proper research. And they found so many cases of individuals saying that even when they were clinically declared dead, they could still, in fact, their level of awareness in many cases gets heightened. Forget about getting reduced, it gets heightened. And they're able to actually suss out what's happening in the operating theater or wherever they have been killed. So they recall that and they come back to life and tell us, even though when they were clinically dead, their ears, their brain waves, everything stops functioning, the heart stops functioning, and yet they seem to be fully aware. And when they come back and the report they give fits extremely well, you can't put it off, shove it aside. It's serious scientific research. Something does survive death. So the near-death experience is a very exotic, very interesting aspect that we can explore further. And of course, some of you will do Google search in Southampton University, and the case studies of great deal of interest. So this is simply a hint that something does survive when we feel we are physically dead. I'll just touch on some of the ideas that have come out in the research. They say in most cases, the first thing that happens with the individual is his sense of awareness is heightened when he leaves the body. It doesn't get decreased. We would think they would get really in a mess. His brain is stopped working. To the contrary, his sense of awareness seems to be heightened. The second thing they report is tremendous peace and tremendous warmth. They don't feel any of the bodily pains, and they feel they are, fortunately they cast aside this thing that was very painful. And they of course report the white light and the usual stuff that science fiction is made of. And they see sometimes they see their dead relatives. And in one interesting case, because I study all these things and try and make sense of it, in one case that individual saw a lot of his past dead relatives, and then when he came back and he was recounting the experience, he said, I saw this person and this uncle and this grandparent and so on, and he mentioned one person who was not supposed to be dead. And he said, but I saw him there as well. And the parents said, yeah, he's died 2 weeks ago. So this is not a minor thing. So whenever you find research which is substantiated in this manner, you must take it seriously. Still, we are just beginning the journey of reincarnation. So something seems to survive. Now the next issue is this. Has anybody done any serious research? Because it's nice to have this floaty idea. How can you be sure? Is it a myth? Just something to give a sense of, if you like, kind of comfort in death? Or is there something more to reincarnation? Now the Indic religions, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, and they don't worry. This is part of our religion. We don't need to explore it. We know it's for sure. But then fortunately, one professor in University of Virginia, and he's a very famous professor called Ian Stevenson, spent his whole life researching reincarnation. He's a very hard-headed scientist, given tremendous credential by his own university as a top scientist, spent his whole life researching reincarnation. Very interesting. Initially what he started was, he said, let me put people into hypnotic regression and say, okay, now go back in time, go back, you are a little baby, now go back, and suddenly that person talks of a different personality. He thought it's a good way to start. But in no time he realized there's not a good way of doing research on reincarnation, because in his surgery there were half a dozen Cleopatras. So they were daydreaming, they were conjuring up their own stories. So this is not suitable research material. He gave it up. But there are some cases of famous people who have been kind of put into hypnotic regression, who have given out fantastic information which fits with facts. But you can do research yourself. So Professor Stevenson stopped researching using hypnotic regression. Then he found something else. He discovered there were lots of young children, normally 3 years old. In fact, the average age in his research is 39 months, who spontaneously remember or start talking about another life. So little boy John gets up in the morning, goes to his mommy, says, Mommy, I'm not John, I'm David. And of course he gets a smack. Mommy says, you are John. No, Mommy, I'm not John, I'm David. And by the way, Mommy, I'm married. You're married, you are 3-year-old? Yes, I'm married. And Mommy, I've got 3 children. And he gives the names of his children. Of course, Mom is bewildered. In most cases, they'll ignore the poor chap. But in many cases, through the university chain, university network, Professor Stevenson finds out. And he'll rush off there, take some translators. Sometimes they talk a different language. Take translators with him, and very studiously, very meticulously, will quiz that youngster again and again. Lots of questions. And that youngster, in a matter-of-fact voice, will give out information about a past life, a different life. And this would be recorded. It's all recorded. Do you know how many case studies this Professor Stevenson has done? You'll be amazed. About 3,000 case studies. That's not a small amount. He spent his whole life researching this. So far, so good. Okay, these youngsters are babbling about another life. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but they're babbling in a very matter-of-fact voice. But then the next stage of his research is the more interesting part. Sometimes the youngsters talk about a life that was lived only 50, 20, 30 years ago. And they can give the location, they can give tremendous amount of information about their name, their family, the house number, the color of the door in their house, where they were married, how many children they had. They give all this information comes up, even some intimate details that they only discuss with their own wives. They would divulge this information, professor. He would write it down meticulously. Now here the fun begins. Because as these lives were not very kind of ancient, suppose they talk about life which was lived 500 years ago, you can't do any research on that. But in many cases the lives were only 25, 30, 50 years old. You can do tremendous proper research on this because you can dig out. And this is what Professor Stevenson has done meticulously. And this is where the unique information that comes out of his research is, there's a wonderful fit. There's an extremely good fit. In some cases, that he recalls, the youngster would talk about the private conversation he would have with his wife, and the wife is still alive, she's an old lady. And this youngster is taken to that house, and that old woman opens the door and says, the little boy says, my wife. So no, you're no problem. But then the information the youngsters give out the private conversation fits. Incredible material. So now, you can see this is not a minor thing. And the further thing Professor Stevenson has done, which is very unique, which the Hindus have never done, is that he said, if an individual is murdered or killed or violently killed, then the place where he was shot or perhaps pierced with a knife or sword or something, the same birthmark appears in with the new youngster. Now this is, you see, people like empirical evidence, physical evidence, not just babbling, not just subjective interpretation, but physical, materialistic, pure empirical evidence. This is what he has done. In fact, if you go on Google and look at Ian Stevenson, and if you like past life experiences and especially birthmarks, there is a video now, clip, about 30-minute clip, where he gives a lecture at one of the universities about his findings. You should do that at your own leisure. But the unique feature is this. In some cases, the information is so dramatic. Suppose somebody was shot, one person was shot, and he had, of course, bullet go through this part and come out of the other part. Now, when the bullet goes in, it only leaves a small mark. But when it comes out, it's already scattered. And unusual as you may find it, the birthmarks fitted. There was a small mark in the front and a bigger mark at the back. So all these autopsy reports, all the photographs, everything is available if you just do Google search in Professor Stevenson's lecture. This is, if you like, empirical evidence, birthmarks, physical evidence, not just talk. But now we see an important thing is this. As I said, thousands of case studies, and you cannot ignore it. Professor Stevenson used to work closely with the Washington Post and the reporters there, and he took one of them with him on one of his trips to say, look, see how meticulous my survey is. And the reporter, who was a skeptic to start with, in no time realized this is a very potent, very powerful thing this professor is discovering. And he asked the professor, what is your drawback? He said, my drawback is I'm a scientist. I'm doing this research with absolute meticulation. I'm not a Hindu. I'm not here to prove reincarnation. I'm doing this research which is not speculation, which is not supposition, which is actual fact. How are these two lives connected? And I asked the science community, you explain. Because this is what I've discovered. I'm just presenting the facts to you. Now you give me the interpretation. How are these two lives connected? These two different lives. So of course the science lobby will come hounding him. They aren't going to allow for this kind of waffly stuff to enter science. So they say, coincidence, coincidence. Dr. Stevenson, it's just coincidence. This chap is babbling and somehow those the facts fit are just coincidence. And you see, Professor Stevenson is a science professor. He knows. When the amount of information this youngster gives fits so well with the previous life, you can work out the statistics of this happening by mere chance. And he's done his statistics very vigorously. And in statistics, most of you are from the business community, you can make a comment that there is something else at play. This is not mere coincidence. So the first challenge that comes as coincidence, he has knocked it out. The second challenge comes, you see, must take on all the challenges. Is there any fraud involved? Or perhaps the child has picked up this information unconsciously about another life. And Stevenson has ruled that out. He went thoroughly with it, saying, now, is there any chance this child is, fraudulent? The little chap has no clue what money means, and there's no money exchanges. He doesn't pay anything to anybody. So there's no money passes, no money is handed over. So there's no fraud involved. I mean, you look at the lives of the children, the photographs, and the families, there's no, in fact, the families are bewildered and frightened by the whole experience. There is no fraud, says Professor Stevenson, and this is not unconscious information the youngsters have picked up, because he does the rigorous research, I'm telling you. You have to give him full marks for that. And the third thing they throw in his face, they say, but surely, Professor Stevenson, you must know, genes, these lovely pesky things, carry tremendous amount of information. Possibly that these two lives are connected genetically. Some of those genes from the past life have somehow entered this new child and influenced his makeup, and that's why he recalls his past life. And again, this is easy to test out, because these lives are only separated by 50 years. You can find some relatives of the previous person and look at his DNA, his genes, and look at the genes of this individual. Is there any link whatsoever? Uncles, aunts, nothing, zero. So every excuse that was thrown in his face saying this is the way we can explain it away is failed miserably, miserably. And Stevenson's heart was broken. He said this to the Washington Post, look, I'm a scientist, I want you to prove reincarnation. I'm simply saying that my particular research is very clearly saying the only way we can link up these two lives is this theory of reincarnation of the Indic religions. Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs have been subscribing to it for thousands of years. That is the only way we can say this is for real. Now this is where the research sits. And of course you are welcome. In fact, I'll tell you one example that's very, very interesting. Recently a youngster called James in the United States said, he used to cry every night, scream in bed every night saying, I'm on fire. And the parents would run. An American boy said, why you are in bed? You're not burning. He said, I'm burning. And the screams became bigger and bigger and greater and greater. The parents were getting very worked up. And they quizzed him. After a lot of quizzing, the young man said, actually I'm a fighter pilot, I'm being shot down. I'm in the cockpit and it's burning. That's why I'm screaming. And the father, a skeptic. Of course, it's nice to have healthy skepticism whenever you explore exotic issues like reincarnation. And I advise the audience here to always be skeptical. Be as rational and as challenging as possible. Don't just swallow things. So the father was a skeptic. He said, nothing doing. And the youngster started to now talk in great detail about his past life, regarding his colleagues, the aircraft carrier in which he was there, exactly where he was shot down over Japan, and how to fly. Little chap knows how to fly a plane. And the father was getting intrigued. So he said, let me do some work. So he looked up the archives of the particular aircraft carrier. And there was another James who was shot down in the Second World War. And the colleagues he had on the thing, same names that were mentioned were there. Everything fitted dramatically. So of course the NBC and ABC and interviewed the chap to no end, kept interviewing all this. This is unusual stuff for a news agency to discover. So they quizzed him, and he gave meticulous replies, and this all by chance is recorded for you to go on Google and look at it. Just do James and reincarnation. This is one of the recent examples. I'm just showing you that. Think about it for yourself, explore it yourself. Don't listen to me and believe me, just explore it and think for yourself. This is dramatic. And they had to actually take, once after he recalled his experience, the crying at night stopped, the screaming at night stopped. He was in fact taken to the place where he was shot down, where he laid flowers, and then he felt at peace with himself. This is a really lovely story to explore. Anyway, so if I said, this is, if you like, the background of the word reincarnation, and I said, there is substantial evidence. Always be skeptical, always be challenging. Don't accept things just on face value, even though it's exotic and nice and colorful. But there are other issues that I need to explore now. Suppose you went along with me and said, Mr. Lakhani, you are a sweet chap with a nice orange jacket and we'll go along with you. What are the consequences? This is the interesting part. The consequences are very interesting. One of the consequences is this. It gives a wonderful reason why you have individuals who are prodigies. Haven't you noticed somebody masters mathematics, Mozart mastering music at the age of 6 and 7? And people say, why? How does this happen? And of course, they'll ask Richard Dawkins, it's just genetic mutation, kind of accidental mutation. That's why this guy is a genius. No, says reincarnation. There is something else at play. The reason why that individual is a prodigy in a particular field, has mastered that field, is because in his many previous lives, he focused on that particular discipline and became master on it. And this is why it's becoming revealed at a very early stage in his life. It gives wonderful explanation about why you have prodigies, why different individuals have different tendencies and different attractions, why somebody is attracted to music, why somebody to mathematics or whatever. It tells us exactly that the background has already fashioned you to go for it as soon as you are born. From early stage, early life, you start to focus on it. The other things that come out of reincarnation, they also give you a wonderful reason why we have phobias, irrational fear that cannot be explained away. Most of us suffer from some phobia or other. Reincarnation says, really speaking, the reason why you have phobias is, it is very possible that in one of your previous lives, you met your death in this particular manner. That's why you're frightened of it. Look, I'll give you my personal secret example. I fear heights. I really get frightened. My daughter puts me in those Ferris wheels, and when it stops at the top, she says, Daddy, look down. I say, no, I'm going to die. And I hang on to the bar as if I'm going to fall off and die instantly. Why? Very likely in one of my previous life, I fell off a great height. That memory of that life is gone, but the fear remains at the back of my head. So when I am exposed, I get very fearful for no reason. It gives an interesting, not I'm saying that all phobias are reincarnation. I can't do that. Be careful. In many cases, things can be sorted out. Because if you look at the modern psychologists, they'll say, oh, well, we can explain it because when the little child was a youngster, he fell off the stool and is frightened of. I said, oh, it's not really rational enough. It's not solid. Why is this severe fright? Of course, they'll go to Dr. Freud and say, Dr. Freud, Madame, this child is frightened because he must have fallen down. And the mother said, no, he never fell down. I looked after him very well, never fell off. Oh, in that case, says Dr. Freud, Madame, after you had conceived, you fell off the stool. Now, this is really stretching it. So I'm telling you, even modern psychology can benefit dramatically by accepting reincarnation as a reason why we have certain tendencies, certain fears, certain phobias, or certain skills. It's a wonderful way to get a deeper insight into our background. So this is the second area, very interesting area. But there is a third area which I want to focus on is this. Reincarnation, the reason why it is crucial and important to again reignite it in modern society is as follows. It tells us whatever you started to participate in, suppose you're becoming master in music or whatever, suppose you die suddenly. Please do not worry, your journey does not come to a halt. You will again start from where you left off. You don't have to start from zero again. So the activities we do in this life, the character we mold for ourselves in this life is perhaps the most important thing that we have which goes from one life to another life. The character we mold for ourselves is the most important thing. And reincarnation tells us focus on your character. Because sometimes people say, how does, sometimes when people make fun of law of karma saying, my karma catching up, how does it catch up? This is how it catches up in your next life. Whatever activity you do has left its seeds in your psyche. When you go, this mass of this thing comes with you and begins to reveal itself. Suppose you are a very honest person, very upright, very focused individual. In your next life, you're already focused individual from childhood. So you get the benefit of what you set into motion in your previous life in this life because it comes out as your character. It's another philosophic issue that reincarnation addresses, which many religions struggle with. Suppose you ask people of religion, why is this person so horrible? He's killing, he's a cold-blooded killer, kills people, millions of people were killed by this man. He must be straight out of the devil or evil. The Indic tradition, all the four Indian religions do not agree there is a devil or evil. They say, this is what they say. They say the reason why people are different, some are sweeties and some are really cruel, it's not because they are inherently cruel, He says, through the process of reincarnation, they may have gone through a pathway which made them very cruel. Look, the theory of reincarnation accepts Darwin and theory of evolution. We have no difficulty with evolution. All the Indic religions agree we have come out of the animal kingdom. And reincarnation started a long time back while we were animals. So some of the vicious traits that we possess, and human beings possess, perhaps came out because they came out through that particular route where they had to be vicious. It was a matter of survival. And they show this, they continue to exhibit this tendency in the human life. So there's nobody is essentially evil. They just gone through a scenic route and they show these colors in this human life. When you see this, this gives you like tremendous dignity and equality to whole of humanity, saying you come through a different path, that's why you're a bit weird, but so be it. We'll soon sort you out. A wonderful way of getting a deeper insight into the human condition, nature of human nature. So if you just restrict it to this life, then you've got very limited scope. See, the other question people ask, and this is, you should, of course, you're going to fire away questions at me. But Mr. Lakhani, the world population is growing. You know, we started with literally 100,000, or with the time of Lucy, maybe 1 or 2 individuals. And now there are 7 billion. Where do all this come from? The answer is from the animal, from the insect, from the single-cell bacteria, to the insect, to the animal, to the plants, to the human. Huge flow of life. 7 billion is nothing. You can have trillions here. So much life entering the human kingdom, and it sticks around here. So evolution in a way gives a very interesting example. Then something else I must point out to show the scientific study that I make of this subject. You see, I'm suggesting that we agree with Darwin that the body that we possess has been fashioned by accidents of evolution and natural selection. So this is why we become this complex. So far, so good. But one thing Darwin has not touched on, which comes out of the Indic religions, is this. It's not just the hardware that's important. The software that runs the hardware or inhabits this hardware, where does that come from? You require a software. If you have a computer hard drive, if you don't put any software, you just get a blinking cursor in your face, nothing happens. But the software that's inherited by that body, we say, comes through reincarnation. We say, Mr. Lakhani, maybe it's already hardwired in the DNA. How do you say it's a separate thing? It's a separate thing. I'll give you an example. Have you noticed, throughout our life, we continue to progress, become more focused, we can master a lot of things, from childhood to becoming mature adult. Your DNA remains the same. So when you reproduce, the DNA has not moved one bit, not 1 ounce. And yet the new individual who comes out comes with different traits. It's the software, not the hardware. And the software comes through reincarnation. I must touch on one other idea. And when people say, but Mr. Lakhani, what is the mechanism? Where is the software? Where does it go? How does it go from one life to another life? The answer that comes from Indic tradition is very interesting. It says, look, when we say this particular transition is metaphysical, you must say metaphysical? That is like a derogatory term. We like physics, because look, physics is my background. This is non-physical, we don't like it. Let me tidy this up. This is going to come and bite us in this century. Metaphysics is not a floaty term, a term to be derided. Metaphysics, the way the term was invented is very interesting. First we say physics means the physical world. We want to explore the essential nature of the world we see in front of us. And they say the world that we see, the material world, is limited. So they invented the new term, metaphysics, means the greater physics. That says the physical world you are so sure is just a subset of a greater reality, meta. So metaphysics is not a minor thing. I'll just show you how important it is. You think metaphysics is a floaty thing? What is it? Because it's not physical. It has to be essentially non-physical, otherwise you can't call it metaphysical, otherwise it's physical. So it will essentially be crucially remain invisible in physical terms, not because it's weakness, this is strength. We say, but where is it? Look, everything you as individual find is endearing, that makes you human, comes out of metaphysics, not physics. I'll just give an example. One of the greatest thinkers here, Bernard Russell, was asked. He was a master mathematician. He spent his life on mathematics, writing lots of stuff on Principia mathematics. He was asked, Professor Russell, what is mathematics? And look at his answer. He said, I have no clue what it is. I don't know where it springs up from. It doesn't come out of any slice of the brain. We have no clue what it is. It works and I have it. See, whole of your system is based on metaphysics. The moment you fly off from the physical to the metaphysical, that means mathematics, all the things that you love, music and this and that, art and the idea of compassion, or idea of consciousness, all of this is non-physical. So everything that is essential about you as human beings is metaphysical in nature. So in the Indian tradition says, this thing, that this particular life force has got inertia. It cannot be, when the body stops, it doesn't want to stop. It wants to gain entry into the human kingdom. And sometimes that particular individual stays aloof, is not reborn immediately. In fact, interesting research by Stevenson. He said if an individual is killed or murdered accidentally, he wants to be reborn very fast. He's born almost within a couple of years, he's reborn because he says, how dare you kill me, I'm back. He comes back very fast. This is very interesting research. But there are some cases where the individual between lives spends a lot of time. Where does he live? He creates a world of his own and is in it and he stays there. These are the heavens and hells of the Hindu tradition. So they stay there, create their own world and they are in it. It's a very interesting idea, but it's in the world of metaphysics. You say, where is that? If I were to ask you when you dream at night, where is it? You see the whole world and you are in it, where is it? You say, I don't know, but it was there, I was in it. That is a metaphysical reality, not a physical one. In the same way, between lives, that individual stays in that state, maybe for a short time or for a long time. There's another issue that arises. If we were to agree, suppose you flowed with me and say, okay, Mr. Lakhani, we let you off. Reincarnation maybe is for real. It's like a merry-go-round. You're born again and again and again. At some stage it becomes a prison. I say, yes. You put a child on the merry-go-round. For the first trip, he says, yippee! And then second time, you go, yeah. And the third trip is, I'm feeling dizzy, take me off. In the same way, the idea of being born again and again, at some stage, you become tiresome. And with that maturity arises in an individual, he will start up and say, what the heck is going on? Getting fed up here. But as long as you are strongly driven by unfulfilled desires, you'll be born again and again to try and clear up your frustrations. So this will continue until when? Otherwise it's a prison, it's a horrible thing. Until you discover your oneness, not with the body, the mind, the intellect, but something special about you. You are the spirit. That's why we use the word spiritual humanism. You are not a materialistic humanist as Richard Dawkins is insisting upon. You are a spiritual humanist. Your essential nature is spirit. And when you discover your essential nature spirit, the cycle stops because you say, what desires? I'm full and pristine and pure. I'm the spirit. That is called, in the Hindu tradition, moksha. In the Buddhist tradition, nirvana. So it's not running away from life. It's realizing this was a bit of a floaty thing. The cycle of birth and death was tiresome. And then, if you like, the story of reincarnation stops. There's one final comment I must pass, which is very serious. Why is reincarnation important to be invoked in modern society? I say it's got psychological, it's got philosophic issues. There's one big one. When you have this idea of a two-life scenario, this one and the next everlasting one, the risk-reward ratio it offers is infinitely skewed. Infinitely skewed. You do a little bit of good here, you get infinite reward. You do a little bit of mistake here, you get infinite damnation. You think, well, it's fine. This was introduced in the Christian tradition, I suspect, by the fathers of Christianity who wanted to make sure that devotees stay straight and narrow. So this was a carrot and stick argument offered to keep them under control. But what is happening in this particular scenario? You see it in the streets of London, in streets of everywhere. When you offer infinitely skewed risk-reward ratio, you create fanatic behavior because you're going to heaven forever and ever. So this life is peanuts, I can knock it off. Suppose, I wanted to set up an office in the city of London, and of course I asked Ernst & Young to kind of be my advisors. I want to set up an investment bank where I'm suggesting to people, invest some amount of money, £500, £5,000, I'll give you infinite reward. And if Ernst & Young were prepared to play along with me, in no time, Office of Fair Trading will close me down and close down Ernst & Young as well. You can't offer things which are impractical. Infinitely skewed risk-reward ratio produces, if you like, tremendous problem it creates hell on earth. Haven't you noticed? Why so easily people are prepared to kill themselves and kill others in the name of religion? Because they are going there, infinite reward. Who cares for this life? And this has to be pulled out. It's a very serious comment to pass. Because the theory of reincarnation gives you risk and reward ratio which is measured. This much activity you do, only this much reward you get. Otherwise you keep going round and round, merry-go-round. No infinite reward at all. This is a very important issue that needs to be reintroduced. It was here in the Western world. Most of the Greek philosophers subscribe to reincarnation, so it's nothing new for the Western world. But it needs to be re-invoked because I told you it will remove fanatic behavior in the name of religion. So reincarnation is not just a floaty thing, exotic thing of the Indians that we need to kind of explore. It's a very relevant issue that modern society requires again to re-explore, re-examine and re-infuse in greater society. It's not to score point for the Indic religions. It's a very practical thing to take into consideration. Look, I've given you lots of interesting ideas. I'm sure you've got lots of questions to ask. So I'm going to stop here and ask you to prepare some questions and fire away happily any questions you want to ask. Thank you, my friends.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. I was actually, well, two things. One, I was picking up on your last thing about the skewed ratio of, you know, the Abrahamic or the Judeo-Christian thing, and I do say I kind of disagreed with that because I was brought up a Catholic. I'm no longer a Catholic, but I was fortunate. I was had a very, very happy life. I believed in Jesus, and Jesus actually especially loved me because I was very naughty. You know, I was the lost sheep, and so, you know, and before I died, I could just do a quick Hail Mary and Joseph, and I'd go straight to heaven, you know, more or less. So, all you good confession, and you have a clean white soul, and none of all this karma that you have to carry around. And so I mean, I know what you're talking about in terms of the fundamentalism, and which goes back to the Christian stuff as well. You know, it's not just now. But anyway, so I was just disagreeing with that, and as a bit of a sweeping statement. But really, my question to you is the difference between the Buddhist and the Hindu idea of reincarnation, because the Buddhists don't believe in the Atman, the soul. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, if anybody says, you know, they come from, I'm not here to offend Abraham, I'm not here for that. I'm simply very worried about what we see in the world stage. People being killed left, right, and center in the name of religion. And the reason I find, the reason that winds them up, and they don't care about their own lives or other lives, is purely because they are given infinite reward. That has to be challenged. And I'm very serious about it. I'm not here to offend people of Abrahamic religion. That's the last thing I want. I'm a pluralist by nature. So if you feel you're going to go to heaven when you die, good luck, madame. I wish you well. I wish I did. The second part of the question is more technical. You see, there's a variation between Hindu, as I said, Hindu, Jain, Sikhs, and Buddhists all subscribe to something like reincarnation, but there's a slight variation with the Buddhist. The Buddhists like to use the word rebirth. You might say, what's all that? The Buddhists say, because we do not believe in an individuality, that the flux that you think is an individual is purely illusion. So they say this particular flux has momentum and is reborn, so it's called rebirth rather than reincarnate, because there's no individual going from one life to another life. So this is a technical issue rather than a philosophic issue, because everything else I said about reincarnation, like your character shows up in the next life and all these things about phobias, and everything is the same with Buddhism as well as Hinduism. There's a slight technical word, reincarnation for the Hindu, Sikh and Jains, and rebirth for Buddhists. So be it. We like to have a slightly different slant on the idea of reincarnation. Why not? Take some more questions. Yes, madam.
Thank you. Yes, a question on the appropriate way of using these ideas. And I'm thinking here of, I've forgotten his name, an English football manager who was fired when he blamed disabled people for being reborn. It was their own fault. It was lack of compassion. And of course in India you do have the whole problem of the caste system. So what's the appropriate way of using these ideas?
The name of the football manager is Glenn Hoddle. And Glenn Hoddle, you know, this is like half-baked ideas of Hinduism. When you don't understand these ideas in its full maturity, you come up with this kind of very superficial comment which are highly damaging, demeaning, and degrading for an individual. This is what he said. He said, the reason why this person is disabled is because he must have done bad things in his past life. Now the theory of reincarnation and law of karma are very complex issues. They say it is not only what you set into motion is going to catch up with, you know, next life. Millions of other things gang up Your contribution may be minor and shove you in a corner. So the reason why somebody is disabled or somebody, kind of in a bad state is not because he deserves it, because lots of things ganged up. When you notice in your routine life, lots of things gang up against you and push you in a corner and you say, I don't deserve it. So this very immature understanding of the law of karma and reincarnation produces these foolish comments. The Hindus do it in India. If you go to India today and say, why is this person poor? You must do something for him. Look at the difference between haves and have-nots. And the answer is immature understanding of the law of karma. The law of karma says it is not the fault of that individual is in a bad state. In fact, it is now your responsibility to lift him up. Otherwise, you're doing bad karma for yourself. This is the whole idea. It's a mature idea of law of karma. Because lots of things gang up against him and he's in trouble. And when you see a problem in front, you see reincarnation, law of karma comes with two parts, two sides. First, what you set into motion is going to catch up with you. We all know it does. The second part of the equation, the Hindus have forgotten, which this gentleman has nicely pointed out, is that if you see an issue in front of your eyes and you turn your back, that too is bad karma. And modern Hindus are doing that. That's the reason why you have a big gap between haves and have-nots. You see, all religions, look, every religion has a habit of getting misused or misinterpreted, and you find that on the world stage today. And the misunderstanding of the law of karma, this immature understanding of the law of karma that he deserves it, or become indifferent to the suffering of others, or become indifferent to your own suffering and become a fatalist, is not the correct interpretation of the law of karma. He says things will gang up, guaranteed. You roll up your sleeves and come fighting. That's what law of karma says. And if you see an issue in front of your eyes, don't turn your back, solve it. Otherwise, you're going to come and bite you as well. I'll take some more questions. Yes, sir.
We talked about the recent studies, Professor Stevenson, and also maybe give credit maybe in the last 10, 50, 100 years. But Jains and Hindus and Sikhs and Buddhists have been believing in this for thousands of years. So what evidence did they have to start this reincarnation?
Yes. You see, in fact, when we look at the history of the Indic religions, it of course goes back into antiquity. Goes back a few thousand years. And this idea of reincarnation, somehow, how do you get the insight? This is an interesting thing to explore. The Indian mind says knowledge is not external. This knowledge that you feel is external, that you require a Hubble telescope to find out, can be sussed out by looking at your own inner structure. You contain, if you like, some of these mysteries of humanity are very much ingrained in us. So the way perhaps the Hindus discover a lot of interesting, like I'll just touch on one more. For example, the theory of Big Bang, the creation comes into being when two things unfold, space and time. You may think it's a very modern physical idea, cosmology, very ancient Hindu idea. He says not two but three things unfold for creation to come into being. No gods. Gods are a ploy. What three things unfold? Say the philosophic Hindu tradition. It says Desh, Kal, Nimit. Space, time, and causation. When they unfold, creation comes into being. And how did they find out? They didn't have Hubble telescopes. They found out through introspection. Incredible material. Through introspection. Look, most of the physical discoveries of modern physics have come through introspection. I'll just give you an example. When Einstein discovered special relativity, you know how he did it? The experiments came afterwards. It was a thought experiment. He simply said, I fly with the beam of light. And if I look at the beam of light, will it have been frozen because I'm flying at the same speed? The answer is no, light has to be light. And this is the beginning of relativity, just a thought experiment. So the intuition you possess is dramatic. So I suspect this is the intuitive Indian mind. Because look, the Indians, the reason why they were focusing on intuition and looking inward is because they had the luxury. The weather was very good in India, food was easy, they can wear a loincloth and sit under the tree and meditate on the navel and do all this wonderful stuff. So the weather helped them to start looking inward for resolution to the human condition. In the West, you have to fight external nature. So the mind was drawn to the physical, if you like, the empirical. Nothing wrong with it. Look, that's also essential and necessary. But that particular mind had the luxury of looking inwards. So this is how we discover a lot of these very interesting phenomena. Take some more questions. Yes, sir, at the back.
Hello, yes. I don't have a problem at all with with you believing in reincarnation. I do have a problem with the way that you attempted to prove scientifically that it exists. Because, of course, Einstein's a classic example of special theory of relativity. Yes, he did start off with a thought experiment, and then he did the hard work afterwards. And, you know, we know that gravity exists, you know, but for a long time before we knew that gravity existed, we didn't know how we held onto the Earth. And what you've done is in your talk, you've made a massive leap from the idea that I'm aware of the case of the young boy who thought he was a fighter, thought he was a pilot who burned, and etc. And all religion, as far as I'm concerned, is based on the idea of filling the gaps in knowledge, things we don't actually know. And the reason that religion today is under pressure is because we know so much more. I mean, we've had the advantage of time, obviously, to learn more. And I'm just surprised that you, as a physicist, use the examples that you've used of research, because what the research did that you used in your examples was stop at a certain point and then made a massive leap and went, therefore that must be reincarnation. There is no actual connection between the research where it stops and proving reincarnation. It's a massive leap of faith. I don't have a problem with that if you want that to be your faith. But faith by definition is blind. You know, there is absolutely no evidence that reincarnation is a factual thing. What would be the benefit in evolution? At what point in our evolution did the gene mutate that caused us to become a thing that is born again? I mean, I don't have a problem with anyone believing it, but there is no science. There is no science to support it.
Okay. You see, as I said, I'm here to invite pointed and controversial questions, and I'm quite comfortable with this. You see, the reason why it doesn't rattle me is this. I come from a strong physics lobby. You know, my background is theoretical physics, quantum mechanics with Sir Roger Penrose. So I come from the right scientific pedigree. Now, this allows me to stand still and even take on Richard Dawkins if when time comes, saying that you must shift from this materialistic humanistic approach to a spiritual humanist approach, which tells us we are much more than matter. And I'm going to rub it in. I won't let him off. So I stand my ground, very severe. I'm going to take on the challenges head on. Now let me explain to you about science, just to show you. You know, when you say science is not scientific, what the heck is science? Let me show you. We see certain patterns in nature, and we try and produce a mental model that can explain those patterns. And these are called hypotheses. And what is the aim of science? Does it stop there? Then it's not science anymore. The aim of science is to continue to challenge the hypothesis to destruction and find an example where this hypothesis fails, and then discard it, flick it away. I'll give you the best example. Because I come from physics, I know my stuff. You see, we had Newton saying, there are two lumps of matter and they're attracted to each other. I mean, there's a big lump here, a small lump here, and the big lump says, I really love you, and they whistle at each other and they're attracted. And this is called the law of Newtonian law of gravitation. You must have learned the G multiplied by m1 multiplied by m2 divided by r square. And so yes, we've done mathematics. And it seems like look, it's a hypothesis, just a mental model you construct to explain the movements of the sun and the moon and so on. So far, so good. It seems so scientific. What scientific? It's a hypothesis. There is not a single scientific theory that you can say has been proved. Not one. Show me one. Every theory is a hypothesis. This theory fits the facts, full stop. When you find a better theory, you'll discard it. If you give me a better theory that can show how these two lives are related, I will discard reincarnation, full stop. Have that ability to be challenging to yourself. And as soon as Einstein came along, he said, all this rubbish, this idea of two lumps of matter, whistling at each other and attracting, that's outdated, the hypothesis is rubbish. How dare you believe in stuff? It's nonsense. It's just the curvature of space-time that produces the influence which appears like gravitation. And straight in 2 ticks, we flicked out Newton, and Einstein came in the stage. Do you think it stopped there? Einstein was struggling. And that again is his hypothesis. Because when it came to the quantum phenomena, Einstein cracked up. It broke his heart. So every scientific theory comes with a health warning. The good thing is they agree this health warning. Science progresses by continually producing hypotheses, not proofs, not a single theory, nothing is proved. It's just the mathematical mecha we use to explain reality. So far it works, good luck. And then we continue to challenge it, otherwise science doesn't progress until we demolish it. Every hypothesis has to be demolished to destruction before a new hypothesis arises and science takes a leap. Do you know what I'm suggesting? I'm saying as a physicist, the reason why modern physics or theoretical physics stopped progressing is because it is stuck in a highly materialistic mold. It cannot think outside the material box. And do you know what has happened? So the integrity of physical sciences, not to Indian philosophy, so the integrity of physical sciences, the science of today is now telling the physicist, think outside the material box. The matter that you are so sure about, this empirical world that you are so sure about, says Erwin Schrödinger, the father of quantum physics, is a mere appearance. Look beyond the appearance. And the physicists say, like Richard Feynman, I have no idea what we are hitting now. So the integrity of science is now already taking us to a new level, which is now pointing to a deeper dimension to reality, which is non-material. This is quantum physics. So I'm just showing you that it's not just, oh, this airy-fairy idea of reincarnation. Every blasted idea, every physical theory, not a single theory has been proved ever. This is just a hypothesis, so far so good. So I'm saying Ian Stevenson has produced a hypothesis, say reincarnation for real, so far so good. If you get me a better hypothesis which can explain this link between two lives, I'm prepared to listen. I'm open to that. Take some more questions. Yes, sir.
I think one of the issues that needs to be faced by gentlemen like yourself who are trying to bridge the gap between science and spirituality is the nature of consciousness. And yes. I know a lot of scientists are, yes, at the wacky end of science at least, are doing this. But we are brought up in an environment where we have an explicit or an implicit education that consciousness is an emergent property of neural complexity. And it comes at us from pharmaceuticals, from progression in computing and so forth. But I understand, I'm not a physicist, I understand that there is no interpretation of quantum mechanics which does not involve consciousness as something out there. And I think this is a very powerful, physicists have no model of consciousness, and the box that I think that you were thinking that they should get out of involves a model of consciousness in order to progress in the quantum field.
Absolutely, excellent. You see, this gives me a wonderful kind of opening. I'm looking for such question. Because you see, the important thing is my professor, the professor who taught me quantum physics, has been working very hard for years and years trying to link consciousness and quantum. He's struggling, but he's still thinking in a materialistic box. He's not able to jump out of it. He's infatuated with matter. This is how modern science progress. Matter and its epiphenomena. You get a little elementary particle with spin, charge, mass, and we explain the universe through that and construct everything. Still fixation on matter, and Penrose is still stuck in the same mold, but he has got a hint, it's to do with consciousness, because this is where the magic happens. Let me touch on this very important issue. You see, I interact, even though my background is physics, I love to think about neuroscience and consciousness. In fact, at one of the talks we had at House of Lords, there was a very interesting meeting about nature of consciousness. And one neuroscientist said, Mr. Lakhani, I said consciousness is something that really baffles us. It's a hard problem of neuroscience or life science. It baffles humanity. He said, Mr. Lakhani, come on, stop all this airy-fairy, floaty stuff. Consciousness is a brain phenomena. Chemical and, if you like, electrical activities creating a buzz that you call consciousness. So live with it, deal with it, and stop all this floaty stuff. I said, no, I don't agree. And Susan Greenfield was there in the meeting, said, consciousness doesn't come out of any slice of the brain, as the gentleman said. It's a real hard problem of neuroscience. What the heck is it? Where does it spring from? Because it doesn't come out of matter, it doesn't come out of brain. And one scientist said, Mr. Lakhani, but we'll show you consciousness your brain phenomena. I said, how? He said, I'll come with a hammer and hit you on the head. Your consciousness will go. See, I proved you it's your brain phenomena. I said, no. Then I gave, of course, if he used that metaphor, I'll use my metaphor. I said, I'll give you another metaphor. Suppose a child comes into the room and starts playing with a switch. When the switch goes one way, the light comes on. When the switch goes the other way, the light goes off. The child says, yep, I know, I'm such a clever boy. Cause and effect. The switch creates light. Can you blame him for that? Of course not. This is the issue with neuroscience. Because what this brain is, it is a mere conduit of consciousness. It's a switch that allows consciousness to flow. You require this complex phenomena. If you're an amoeba, then you got cognition, just awareness, not consciousness. When you evolve to the human stage, this becomes very complex and turns into consciousness. So the idea of consciousness is not something that is produced by matter, but requires a very elaborate mechanism, a material mechanism to manifest itself. So this is a switch. So I told the scientists, all you've done is broken the switch. You not touch consciousness. You interfered with the switch, the conduit through which consciousness flows through. Now you see, my work personally, because I'm very pleased you asked this question, my personal individual work is precisely this, to link up these two major hard problems of physical sciences, which is consciousness. I tell you how serious the problem is. Quantum physics can be summarized in the following way. They say, you see this material we are sure about? Actually, when you try and get a pinch of it, try and get to the smaller than the smallest, it seems to elude us. At best, we can describe reality not to be material, but mathematical. So far, so good, because mathematically, quantum physics is perfection itself. It gives answer to the 10th decimal places. All your gizmos work on that. Even your DNA works on that. So this works to the 10th degree. But when the question arises, as the gentleman said, how can this mathematical reality and metaphysical reality turn into physical world that we see in front of us? You require a conscious observer to flip it. And this is where the issue stands at the moment. And science, physics says, Mr. Lakhani, go away. We don't want consciousness in our field, material stuff, go away. They don't want to accept the word consciousness in quantum. And yet it sits there in the middle of it saying, now explain. So do you know how they're trying to explain reality? How this thing from the mathematical becomes material? This is called, if you like, many world scenario. I'm really digressing, but it's such a lovely question. I must explore it. It says the way we can explain how this happens actually doesn't happen. They say every instant of time while I'm talking to you, at every infinitesimal second of time, copies of ourselves, the whole creation, every sun, moon, star, all these EY offices, all have been moving away from each other. At every infinitesimal moment of time, infinite copies of ourselves are moving away. This is the only way you can avoid conscious observer in your physics. This is called divergence with a vengeance. Imagine infinite copies of ourselves already, infinite times already been moved away. Now if you're prepared to go down that line, that means you're thrown in the towel. Science progresses through convergence, not through divergence. This is divergence with a vengeance. So how will they resolve it? They'll have to come here. Because the idea of consciousness sits at the heart of, if you like, some of the most important issues that we face in neuroscience. What the heck is this? Where does it spring from? Why is it such a substratum of reality? And what is this thing called quantum? The linkage is at this deeper level. And you see, when I see people like Daniel Dennett giving, I tell you, I explain, he writes big books on consciousness. All he does is, he produces a jungle of jargon, computer jargon, and he gets lost in it and wants you to follow him get lost. I've explained consciousness away. What the heck? Just because you invent lots of vocabulary in order to explain this away doesn't mean that you explained it. The hard issue, the hard problem of modern physics and the hard problem of life sciences is the convergence in the name of the game. And here I stand. And in days to come, what I'm suggesting will become mainstream.
Thank you very much for a very interesting talk, which I found suggestive, but not entirely persuasive. However, as a long-time Buddhist practitioner, I believe in reincarnation or strictly rebirth from an entirely different line of argument, which I'll try to explain in only 2 or 3 sentences. It comes from the strict application of Buddhist metaphysics and the study of cause and effect, because the law of karma is nothing more than a study of cause and effect. And I did a syllabus that lasted 3 years and had 3 tough examinations in it. But the bottom line of it was to prove that there can never be an effect that doesn't have a cause. Now, we all arrive in this world as highly conditioned individuals, for example. What is the cause of that? Now, a lot of people will say, aha, we had the gene for this and the gene for that. That may be true, but it doesn't answer any question as to why that gene was expressed or not. 30 years ago, genetics was very comfortable in saying, well, we have the genes for this, and we'll find a gene for that, and this will be explained by another gene, and so on. We now have discovered the epigenome, which is an entirely different phenomenon, which is variable through life, and can be changed by life events, and most crucially, can be passed on. So I submit that when my two children popped into the world, I saw them both come in the world. They are entirely different individuals, as it turned out. There had to be an explanation for this. Genetics, simple genetics, can't explain it. There had to be a cause behind that. And that's why I, as a Buddhist, believe in rebirth. Not quite the same thing as reincarnation, as you've pointed out. So my question is, would you care to comment on that line of argument?
You see, there is a slight variation between the Buddhist philosophical approach and the Hindu approach. There's nothing wrong. They've been kind of tussling over it for many years, thousands of years, I would say. It's a very healthy dialogue. But one thing the gentleman has pointed out, of course, this idea that it's the same nature, same nurture, and their children are different. So what's the cause for it? Is it rebirth? But there's one other thing that he mentioned, which is very important, I must touch on. You see, the idea is that what is the first cause? How do we get started off? What caused this whole of this creation? And there were some theologians very keen to bring God back into the argument, into the debate, saying the Big Bang is okay. You know, we now agree with 13.7 billion years ago, we all started with the Big Bang. We can't now fight that anymore. We let it go. But we say the person who pressed the button was God, so bring him back. But the Indian philosophy, the Nasadiya Sukta, says, no, nothing doing. Didn't I tell you? Three things unfold for creation to come into being. It's such ancient intuitive thought through introspection. Three things unfold. What are they? Desh, Kal, Nimit. Space, time, and causation comes with the Big Bang. So if you ask Stephen Hawking, what was there before time, before the Big Bang? He said, don't ask the question, it's irrelevant, there was no time. So if you ask me what caused the Big Bang, my answer is the same. Don't ask the question, it's irrelevant, causation comes with the Big Bang. So once the Big Bang comes, causation, it links. This is whole of science is nothing but exploring cause and effect. Haven't you noticed? It's electromagnetism, gravitation, nuclear power, whatever. It is nothing but exploring how objects and events are interconnected through the phenomena of cause and effect. You call it electrical or whatever. It's this linkage between objects and events that we are exploring. So causation, according to the Indian thought, is very powerful. Nasadiya Sukta says, comes because causation comes with a Big Bang. Before that, you can't ask what caused it. Once this thing starts unfolding, it goes in its own weird ways, things kind of interact, and this process continues forever. I think our process will continue forever. We must put a break to it. Thank you, my friends. Thank you.